Sushruta for NEET is now available on the Google Play Store. Try it out for free.
Hi, my dear students. Hearty welcome to biology class of Jnanamarga.in. I am your professor, GKB, biology professor. In the last class, we have studied about the respiratory organs present in various animals, and also we have started looking into the details of the respiratory organs present in human beings. So in continuation of that, in today's class, we shall start studying how the breathing takes place. That is, mechanism of breathing. You know, breathing is simply called ventilation, in which air is taken in having more of oxygen, and it is given out containing carbon dioxide. This inhaling of the air is known as inspiration, and exhaling is also called expiration. Now, we have to know how it takes place. How that the air from outside enters into our respiratory system. What makes the air to get into our respiratory system, and what makes the air to come out of our respiratory system. That means, you know, our respiratory system is mainly lungs. So, this aspect we are going to study in today's class. Okay? So, the breathing, that is exchange of gases between the atmosphere and our respiratory structure, lungs, involves two stages. These two stages are, one is inspiration. Inspiration means inhaling. It is otherwise known as inhaling. I-N-H-A-L-I-N-G. Inhalation or inhaling, during which atmospheric air is drawn in, and expiration is also known as exhalation or exhaling. Exhalation by which alveolar air is released out. So atmospheric air is taken in and alveolar air is released out. It is not that when we inhale, we are inhaling only oxygen containing air. There is nothing like any filter to keep away all other gases and only to let in oxygen. No, not like that. Whenever we inspire, whenever we breathe in the air, whatever that is contained outside, we inhale inside. We take it into the lungs. And while expiring, while exhalation, while breathing out, we send out all the air that is contained in the alveoli. That means, whenever we exhale, whenever we breathe out, the air that comes out from our nose, please remember, it not only contains carbon dioxide, it contains oxygen also. Point to be remembered, most of the students mistake that when we give out the air, when we breathe out the air through the nose, most of the students think that it contains carbon dioxide. No doubt, the air which we breathe out, it contains carbon dioxide, but remember, more than that carbon dioxide, in the air which we breathe out, there is more of oxygen than carbon dioxide. This point you should remember. Most of you think that when we breathe out carbon dioxide containing air more. No. Comparatively, when you have breathed in, when you are taken in, how much carbon dioxide was there in the air which you have breathed in? When compared to that, when we breathe out, more of carbon dioxide is going out. So, exhalation is not a procedure, is not a process of sending out only carbon dioxide containing air. No. Exhalation involves passing out of the air which contains both carbon dioxide and oxygen. As a matter of fact, more of oxygen than carbon dioxide. This point I will come to again later. The movement of air into and out of the lungs is carried out by creating what is called pressure gradient. Only when there is a pressure gradient, only when there is a differences in the partial pressure outside and inside, between the atmosphere and between the lungs, then only you will come across the movement of air from outside to inside or from inside to outside. Inspiration can occur if the pressure within the lungs, that is intrapulmonary pressure. Intra means within, pulmonary means the lungs. Pulmonary means the lungs. Inspiration means movement of the air from outside into the lungs. Inspiration can occur if the pressure within the lungs is less than atmospheric pressure. Less than atmospheric pressure. That means partial pressure of that gas, whatever that we are interested into, that partial pressure of the gas is more on the outer side when compared to inner side. Therefore, during inspiration, you see that the air moves, especially the air containing oxygen, it moves from outside to inside. That is, there is a negative pressure in the lungs with respect to atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure is more than the pressure inside the lung, that is intrapulmonary pressure. This is about inspiration. Okay. Similarly, expiration takes place when the intrapulmonary pressure, that is the lung pressure, intrapulmonary pressure is higher than atmospheric pressure. Because of the intrapulmonary pressure is more, atmospheric pressure is less, the air comes out of the lungs to the atmosphere. This aspect we are going to study in detail in the rest of the lecture. In this respiration process, we come across a part of the respiratory system, namely diaphragm. The diaphragm and a specialized set of muscles. There is a special set of muscles called external and internal intercostals. There are two sets of muscles, external intercostal muscle and internal intercostal muscles. Where they are present? They are present between the ribs. Help in generation of such gradients. Now the question is that you have already heard that for the air to move in from the atmosphere to the lungs or from the lungs to the atmosphere, there should be pressure gradient. And this pressure gradient is generated because of the involvement of a dome-shaped diaphragm and also a set of muscles called external and internal intercostal muscles. There are two sets of muscles, external intercostal muscles on the outside, internal intercostal muscles on the inside of the ribs. These help in the generation of such a pressure gradients. Let us see how it is happening. Inspiration is initiated by the contraction of the diaphragm, which increases the volume of thoracic chamber in the antero-posterior axis. This is important. So, here, antero-posterior axis, what happens? This contraction of the diaphragm, there is a dome-shaped diaphragm. When the diaphragm, which is a dome-shaped, let us just see here. Okay, 1 minute. This is what you have, dome-shaped diaphragm. So, this is a dome-shaped diaphragm. The diaphragm, which is raised above, this diaphragm, it gets lowered, it gets flattened. When the dome-shaped diaphragm, by default, it is curved up. Now it gets flattened. That means you see that inside the thoracic chamber, there is increase in the volume, in antero-posterior axis. This is what I said. So when the dome-shaped diaphragm is flattened, contraction means when the dome-shaped diaphragm contracts or becomes from this dome-shaped, it becomes a little bit flattened. When the dome-shaped diaphragm is contracted, this increases the volume of thoracic chamber in the antero-posterior axis. In the antero-posterior axis. Here, antero-posterior. This much of volume is increased. You know, when the volume increases, the pressure decreases. You know, Boyle's law, inversely proportional. When the volume increases, pressure decreases. That's all. The another one here, not only that much. So you have seen that there is increase in the antero-posterior axis. At the same time, the contraction of external intercostal muscle. External, there are two sets, external and internal. Now, external intercostal muscles, the contraction of external intercostal muscles lifts up the ribs and sternum, causing an increase in the volume of the thoracic chamber in the dorsoventral axis. I shall show you. So here, these ribs, whatever you see the ribs, these are all facing downward. These are all facing downward. Now these ribs have been raised up. The ribs have been raised up. Not only that, the ribs have been raised up. Even the sternum bone, whatever the sternum bone is there, breastbone, it comes up, or it is gets pushed out. It gets pushed. Ribs move upward, and the sternum or breastbone gets pushed outward. This makes increase in the dorsoventral axis, increase in the volume along the dorsoventral axis. This further increases the volume of the pulmonary cavity. Okay, I shall come to this point again. Let me just speak about diaphragm. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped structure. Whenever it is relaxed, it will be always a dome-shaped like this. The dome-shaped structure. And you must remember that, always ask a question, diaphragm is made up of skeletal muscles. It is made up of skeletal muscles. So this diaphragm is present just below the lungs. You will be having the lungs somewhere here. Okay, here, lungs. And forms floor of the thoracic cavity. And the diaphragm plays an important role in the pulmonary ventilation or respiration. Okay, let us see that another diagram. Look here. This is what I said. This is dome-shaped diaphragm. Look into the position of the diaphragm. Dome-shaped diaphragm. Look into the level, position. At the beginning of inspiration, the dome-shaped diaphragm gets lowered. It gets contracted. Look into that position. It has come down. It has come down. And ribs, look at the ribs. Ribs were facing downward. Ribs were in a downward position. When the inhalation has to take place, now you see that ribs have moved upward and outward. Thereby pushes this breastbone also outward. So when this diaphragm, dome-shaped diaphragm, got lowered, there is increase in the antero-posterior axis volume, increase in the volume along the antero-posterior axis. When the ribs move outward and push the sternum outward, there is increase in the volume in dorsoventral axis. That means there is overall increase in the volume of the pulmonary cavity inside the lung. And this makes volume got increased, pressure got decreased, as a result of which the air enters in. Air enters in. So this is what inhalation. This is what inspiration. Now let us see how this expiration takes place. The same thing now. Whatever you have seen in that, the same diagram is given in another way. Right? At the beginning, diaphragm gets lowered, ribs move upward, outward, increasing the volume of the lung inside. And during expiration is always said to be exhalation is always said to be passive process. That means it makes this diaphragm to go back to its original position. It makes these ribs to get back to their normal position, original position. That means it is a passive process during which the volume got reduced, pressure got increases. Because of the reduction in the volume and increase in the pressure, the air is now forced out to go to the nose outside, from the lungs to the atmosphere. This is what exhalation or expiration, right? So the overall increase in the thoracic volume causes a similar increase in pulmonary volume. This is during inspiration. Overall increase in the thoracic volume causes a similar increase in the pulmonary volume. An increase in the pulmonary volume decreases the intrapulmonary pressure to less than the atmospheric pressure, which forces the air from outside to move into the lung, and this is inspiration. Right? You have seen that. This is what the NCERT book is showing you the same thing. The diaphragm, dome-shaped diaphragm, has moved downward, contracted. And the ribs along with the sternum have moved upward, outward. There was increase in the volume inside, and this brings about a decrease in the pressure. As a matter of fact, the air outside in the atmosphere pressure has a higher pressure. So this makes the air to enter in. In the another, that is during expiration, the dome-shaped diaphragm, contracted dome-shaped diaphragm comes back to its relaxed condition, arced upward. Ribs and the sternum go back to their original position, come back to their original position. So volume is decreased, pressure gets increased, and this makes volume of the thorax decreases, pressure increases. This makes the air to go out. Air gets expelled from the lungs. So relaxation of the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles, inner intercostal muscles. Please remember, expiration is due to the external intercostal muscles contracting. Relaxation is due to the internal intercostal muscles. Returns to the diaphragm, returns the diaphragm and the sternum to their normal position, and reduce the thoracic volume and thereby pulmonary volume. This leads to an increase in intrapulmonary pressure. Intrapulmonary pressure means pressure inside the lung, so slightly above the atmospheric pressure, causing the expulsion of air from the lungs, and this is known as expiration. I shall show you another picture pertaining to this. So this is at rest. At rest. Atmospheric pressure is 760 mm of mercury. Intra-alveolar pressure is 760 mm of mercury. That means if the atmospheric pressure and the intra-alveolar pressure, intrapulmonary pressure remains the same, there will not be any exchange of gases. No. There will not be any exchange of gases. When the exchange of gases takes place, if the atmospheric pressure remains the same, 760 mm of mercury, and intra-alveolar pressure is lower, reduced from 760 to 758 mm, even this difference of only just 2 mm of mercury is sufficient to force the air into the lungs. And you know why that intra-alveolar pressure comes down? It is because of the increase in the volume inside the lungs. That is the reason. So I hope you have understood this very clearly. This is how the breathing or mechanism breathing works out. We have the ability to increase the strength of inspiration and expiration with the help of additional muscles in the abdomen. Many times when you go to doctor, whenever doctor has to examine you, doctor may ask you, when he holds the stethoscope on your chest, after examining for some time, he may ask you to take deep breath. That means we have the ability to increase the strength of inspiration. At that time, your abdominal muscles move. Remember, your additional muscles in your abdomen have to work. On an average, how many times you breathe? A healthy human, that means of your age, and a healthy human being, a healthy man or healthy woman, a healthy human being generally breathes 12 to 16 times per minute. You can just see your watch and also see that how much times you are breathing normally. You should not hold the breath. Or you must ask your friend just to say how many times you are breathing, and he has to look into the time. If at all you count, generally an adult healthy man, he or she breathes 12 to 16 times per minute. Important to be remembered. 12 to 16 times. The volume of air involved in breathing movements can be estimated by a gadget called spirometer, or it is also called respirometer. The volume of air involved in breathing movements can be estimated by using spirometer, which helps in a clinical assessment of a pulmonary function. Many times, who have some respiratory complications, the doctor advises to these patients just to keep a respirometer or to keep a spirometer with them, and just to look into the measurement of this. We are going to look into certain measurements, certain capacities, and based on that, doctor will advise the patient to have some medication. So, the seriously affected individuals or whose respiratory system has chronic problems, they will be always advised to have respirometer and to make use of the respirometer before administering any of the medicines. This is what such a respirometer or spirometer. Respirometer or spirometer. Now, let us look into another important concept, respiratory volumes and capacities. Very, very, very important. You must know first what are these respiratory volumes. Then also you must know what are these respiratory capacities. And these respiratory volumes, which help us to know about the respiratory capacities, are very important in just determining the condition of our lung, or just determining the healthiness of our lung. How effective is our lung? And nowadays, because of this corona pandemic, you might have seen lot of people going for oximeter and like that. Perhaps you might not have heard about that oximeter before that, and you might not be knowing the values of that. What is the normal value? How much oxygen that should be there? What is the capacity of that hemoglobin to carry? We might not have bothered about that. But now everyone is very much familiar with the oximeter and all. Okay. Now that is not our cup of tea. We shall look into respiratory volumes and capacities. Tidal volume. First, let us look into tidal volume. What is a tidal volume? Please try to understand the meaning of each and every word of this, every terms. Then only it is possible to calculate capacities. What is tidal volume? Volume of air inspired or expired during a normal respiration. Now, I am sitting. I am inhaling and exhaling. I take air and give out air. I am simply inhaling and exhaling. Now, you just count either how much of the air I inhaled or how much of the air I have exhaled. Any one of these, you have to take it into consideration. Volume of air inspired or volume of air expired given out during normal respiration is known as a tidal volume. It is called tidal volume. Not both. Either you have to take it into consideration how much of the air you have breathed in or how much of the air you have given out. This is what is called tidal volume. Tidal volume is volume of air either inspired or expired during a normal respiration, not forcible respiration. During normal life, it is approximately 500 ml. This is approximately 500 ml in normal person. That is, a healthy man or woman can expire or inspire, can breathe in or breathe out approximately 600 to 8,000 ml of air per minute. We have already seen. What is that? Tidal volume is 500. What is that 500? During single breathing, either inhaling or exhaling. During single inhalation or exhalation, we either take in 500 ml of air or breathe out 500 ml of air. This is at one time inspiration or one time expiration. You know, a healthy man breathes around 12 times or 16 times per minute. So 12 into 500, it comes to 6,000, or 500 into 16, it comes to 8,000 ml per minute. I hope you understood this. Right? Now, having understood this tidal volume, we shall look into another, that is inspiratory reserve volume. Inspiratory reserve volume is abbreviated as IRV. Always you must know about these abbreviations. TV means not the TV, television, TV, tidal volume. Inspiratory reserve volume. What is this inspiratory reserve volume? Additional volume of air. Additional volume of air. A person can inspire by a forcible inspiration. Additional volume of air. A person can inspire, take in by a force, by a forcible inspiration. What is that forcible inspiration? Again, the same thing what I have just said few minutes before. When you go to doctor, after examining you, doctor says, take a breath, deep breath. Take a deep breath. Deep breath is nothing but forcible inspiration. This is normal. It is possible. So additional volume of air, a person, additional volume of air. What is this additional? Additional to whatever you are normally doing. You are putting force. Additional volume of air. A person can inspire by a forcible inspiration. This is on an average 2,500 ml to 3,000 ml. This average is 2,500 to 3,000 ml. You must remember this value, whatever that is given in NCERT book, not in any other book. Ultimately, we have to rely on NCERT biology book only. This is inspiratory reserve volume. That is volume of air that is forcibly breathed in. Now let us look into what is known as expiratory reserve volume. Expiratory reserve volume is indicated as ERV, expiratory reserve volume. What is this expiratory reserve volume? Additional volume of air a person can expire by a forcible expiration. Additional volume of air a person can give out, send out, force out by a forcible expiration. That is, look here. Even after passing out the air, with the force you are forcing, with the force you are making the air to go out, that is expiratory reserve volume. How much? If the inspiratory reserve volume, look here, inspiratory reserve volume means you can take, you can breathe out 2,500 to 3,000 ml. This is not forcible, but that much you cannot force out. Try, you cannot. So this is additional volume of air a person can expire by a forcible expiration is 1,000 ml to 1,100 ml. That was 2,500 to 3,000 ml. This is 1,000 ml to 1,100 ml. Okay. Now, the term is there. Residual volume. What is this residual volume? Residual volume is known as RV. Volume of air remaining in the lungs. Volume of air remaining in the lungs even after a forcible expiration. Now, you have taken in air. Normal breathing. ERV. What is that ERV? Expiratory reserve volume. Even after that forcibly, by force, you have sent air. Do you think that after doing all this circus, your lung is completely empty? No. Your lung is not completely empty now. Even after doing all this circus, even after forcing the air from the lung, some amount of air always remains in your lung, and this is what is known as residual volume. Volume of air remaining in the lungs even after forcible expiration is called residual volume, and this averages 1,100 to 1,200. Don't get confused. Residual volume is 1,100 to 1,200. Expiratory reserve volume is 1,000 to 1,100. You must know, expiratory reserve volume is 1,000 ml to 1,100 ml. Inspiratory reserve volume is 2,500 to 3,000 ml. Expiratory reserve volume 1,000 ml to 1,100 ml. Residual volume is 1,100 to 1,200 ml. I hope you have heard now. Tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, residual volume. All these volume, whatever you got now, they help you to calculate or to derive various pulmonary capacities. By adding up a few respiratory volume, whatever you have just studied, described above, one can derive various pulmonary capacities which can be used in a clinical diagnosis. By looking into these respiratory volumes, one can derive what is called pulmonary capacities, and this is very much required for the clinical diagnosis of the problem of the respiratory system in the patients. Now let us look into inspiratory capacity. Inspiratory capacity is always abbreviated as IC. Inspiratory capacity is abbreviated as IC. What is that inspiratory capacity? Total volume of air a person can inspire. How much of the air a person can take in, get into his lung is known as inspiratory capacity. Total volume of air a person can inspire after a normal expiration. After a normal expiration. Look here. Breathe in. Expiration, normal expiration, you are sending out. Normal expiration is followed by normal inspiration, again forcible inspiration. So, that means inspiratory capacity includes your tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume. Very important to remember, this includes tidal volume, that is the normal inspiration whatever you have. After normal expiration, you have normal inspiration. Again, you are taking inspiratory reserve volume. This includes tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume. It gives you the inspiratory capacity. We know what is the tidal volume? 500. What is inspiratory reserve volume? You know 500 plus 2,500, or you know 500 inspiratory reserve volume varies between 2,500 to 3,000. If it is 2,500, inspiratory capacity is 3,000 ml. If it is 500 plus 3,000, it will be 3,500 ml. So I am just showing you, look here, inspiratory reserve volume 2,500 to 3,000. I am adding tidal volume 500 plus 2,500, it comes to 3,000, or 500 plus 3,000, it comes to 3,500 ml, right? Yeah. This is inspiratory capacity. IC is equal to this one, ml. Now, what is this? Inspiratory capacity. Now let us look into expiratory capacity. What is expiratory capacity? Total volume of air a person can expire after a normal inspiration. After a normal inspiration, it should be followed by normal expiration. After that, forcible expiration. So, tidal volume, that is normal expiration, plus expiratory reserve volume. Expiratory reserve volume. That means tidal volume 500. And how much expiratory volume? We have seen that it ranges between 1000 or 1100. 500 plus 1000 means it becomes 1500. 500 plus 1100 means it becomes 1600 ml. Right? I hope you remember. This is what you got. The expiratory reserve volume ranges between 1000 to 1100. Expiratory reserve volume. Look here. Expiratory reserve volume 1000 to 1100. Right? That only I wrote here. 1000 to 1100. So we have seen inspiratory capacity. We have seen expiratory capacity. Now let us see functional residual capacity. What is that? Volume of air that will remain in the lungs after a normal expiration. After a normal expiration. This is normal expiration. How much volume of air that will remain in the lungs? It is functional residual capacity. For this, we have to calculate expiratory reserve volume. Expiratory reserve volume is the volume of air that you have forced out. Otherwise, it will remain there. Plus residual volume. You know how much expiratory reserve volume? Expiratory reserve volume. You know expiratory reserve volume is 1000 to 1100 plus residual volume. Residual volume 1100 to 1200. That you have to add to this to calculate functional residual capacity. Expiratory reserve volume is 1000 to 1100. Reserve volume is 1100 to 1200. If you add this, it is 2100 to 2300. So this is what ERV plus RV. This is ERV, this is RV. It comes to 2100 to 2300. This is what is the functional residual capacity. Now, vital capacity. The maximum volume of air a person can breathe in after a forced expiration, after sending out forced expiration, then how much you can fill it. This includes expiratory reserve volume, TV, inspiratory reserve volume. TV plus inspiratory reserve volume. It is inspiratory capacity plus expiratory reserve volume. So this all is considered for vital capacity. Vital capacity. So you can count this also. Expiratory reserve volume. Expiratory reserve volume. Not capacity. Not expiratory capacity. Expiratory reserve volume. 1000 to 1100. TV. It is always tidal volume. 500. Here also 500. IRV. Inspiratory reserve volume. 2500 to 3000. So if you total this, it comes to 4000 to 4600. Approximately it is said that, generally we say that it is around 4800. It is vital capacity. Now you have to count what is known as total lung capacity. For total lung capacity, total volume were accommodated in lungs at the end of the forced inspiration. At the end of the forced inspiration, this includes RV, ERV, TV, IRV, or vital capacity plus residual volume. We have seen that vital capacity as around 4800. To this, around 4800. To this vital capacity, you add residual volume. How much is residual volume? You know, residual volume, go back. Residual volume is around, you take that, residual volume around 1200. That means 4800 plus 4800 plus 1200 it comes to nearly 6,000 ml. I hope you have understood. This is very important. Always in every alternate examinations, it is asked, one or the other question is asked on this pulmonary volumes or pulmonary capacities. Now, let me just to show you some of the pictures pertaining to this. This is what you get in a spirogram. Look here. This is a TV. Tidal volume. Difference 2,200 to 2,000 means 500 ml. 500 ml is the tidal volume. And you know, inspirated reserve volume. Inspirated reserve volume. It is the difference between 5,700 to 2,700. That means 3,000 ml. I said inspirated reserve volume 2,500 to 3,000. Then you have TV plus ERV, IRV is equal to IC, inspiratory capacity. IC, it comes around 3,500 ml. This is ERV, expiratory reserve volume. This is residual volume, 1,200. Expiratory reserve volume, around 1,000. And this is what is the functional residual capacity. Functional residual capacity, for that, we have to include ERV plus RV. And this ERV, tidal volume, plus IC, all these together, vital capacity. IRV, IRV, TV, IRV, TV, plus ERV, vital capacity. Vital capacity plus residual volume, total lung capacity. So total lung capacity is around 5,700 to 6,000 ml. This is what the measurement you get by using this spirogram to look into the lung volume changes. By looking into this, one can count whatever that is available here. These are the volumes you get it. And all capacities we have to calculate. We have to derive that capacity. Only volumes, tidal volume, inspirated reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, these are only shown here, and other one we have to calculate ourselves. Right? This is also another information just to show you what is that measurement in adult male, adult female, and the description of this. Whatever I have explained now, the description is given here. Right? This is one more diagram pertaining to this. And now let us study a little bit of this exchange of gases. In detail, we are going to study in the next class. Alveoli are the primary sites of exchange of gases. Whenever we breathe in, the air enters into our alveoli. In the alveoli, deoxygenated blood is brought by means of pulmonary arteries. Exchange of gases also occur between the blood and the tissues. Once the blood is taken to the tissues, in the tissues, when the blood capillaries take the oxygen to the tissues, exchange of gases takes place there also. Oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged in these sites. And we must remember, any exchange that takes place during respiration is by simple diffusion. Very important point to be remembered. All exchanges, wherever it takes place, it is by simple diffusion, mainly based on the pressure or concentration gradient. Concentration gradient. Always these respiratory gases diffuse from the region of higher partial pressure to the region of lower partial pressure. They always diffuse based on or due to the difference in the concentration gradient or pressure gradient. Solubility of the gases as well as the thickness of the membranes involved in the diffusion are also some important factors that can affect the rate of diffusion. What is that? Solubility of the gases and the thickness of the membrane. They are involved in the diffusion of these gases. Pressure contributed by an individual gas in a mixture of gases is called partial pressure. Pressure contributed by an individual gas. Whenever we just breathe in air, in that air, pressure of individual gas, oxygen is more important for us. Pressure contributed by an individual gas in a mixture of gases, is called partial pressure, and is represented as a PO2 for oxygen, PCO2 for carbon dioxide. Right? Partial pressure of these two gases in the atmospheric air and the two sites of diffusion are mentioned in the table 17.1. Let us see this. Look here. This is what? Now respiratory gas, oxygen. The oxygen, the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmospheric air is 159. Partial pressure in mm of mercury, partial pressure of oxygen in terms of mm of mercury is 159 in the atmospheric air. When the atmospheric air enters into the alveoli, you see that in the alveoli, you come across, when the air comes here, it will be from the atmosphere. When the air is taken into the alveoli, in the alveoli, the partial pressure of oxygen is 104. If you look into the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood vessel, which has brought the blood there, the blood in the blood vessel that contains the deoxygen blood in the alveoli, the partial pressure of oxygen is 40. So here you can see the difference in the partial pressure. So in the alveoli, the oxygen diffuses from the alveolar sac into the blood vessel, because there the partial pressure of oxygen is less, so it diffuses into the blood vessel. This blood vessel carries this oxygen to the tissue level. When it comes near the tissue level, the partial pressure, because this partial pressure is 40, when gas diffused here, the partial pressure increases, and it comes, when the blood is brought to the tissue level, the partial pressure of oxygen at the tissue level in the blood capillary which has brought the oxygen there, it is found to be 95. But in the tissue, the partial pressure of oxygen is 40. So what will happen? The oxygen diffuses into the tissue. In turn, if you look into the carbon dioxide in the tissue, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the tissue is found to be 45 because of the metabolic reactions there. When you see the blood vessel there, in the blood vessel, the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide in the blood vessel, this carbon dioxide, it was found to be less. So what will happen? From the tissue, carbon dioxide diffuses into the blood vessel. And this, now thereby the partial pressure of carbon dioxide increases here, and it comes to 45. In the alveoli, if you look into the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the alveolar sac, 40. In the blood that is brought there, that is 45. So carbon dioxide diffuses from the deoxygen blood into the alveoli, and in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide partial pressure is 0.3. So from the alveoli, the carbon dioxide moves out along with the outgoing air. So this is what you have, the table showing you how that the oxygen or carbon dioxide diffuses from one part to another part. The same thing is shown here in its diagrammatic sketch. Right? Look here. Inspired air. Alveolar air comes here. In the alveoli, the air comes to the alveoli. In the alveoli, you will see that partial pressure of oxygen is 104 mm of mercury. In the blood vessel here, the blood has, this is the blood which has come here. In the blood, here, PCO2, the PO2. If you look into that, the PO2 here, PO2 is 40 mm of mercury. PO2 here is 104 mm of mercury. So what will happen? From this alveoli, the oxygen diffuses into the blood vessel. So from 40, it gets raised up. Now the blood goes to the heart. From the heart, it is taken into tissue. When it comes to the tissue, you can see that the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood capillary is 95, and partial the PO2 in the tissue level, PO2 in tissue level is 40. So from the blood vessel, the oxygen diffuses into the tissue. If you look into the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the tissue, it is 45 mm of mercury. But in the blood vessel, it is 40 mm of mercury. In the blood vessel, it is 40 mm of mercury. So carbon dioxide from the tissue, it diffuses into the blood vessel, and this blood vessel brings that the carbon dioxide to the heart. From there, it is brought to the lung. In the lung, if you see that, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is found to be, partial pressure of carbon dioxide found to be 45, but here inside the alveoli, it is 40. So carbon dioxide diffuses to the alveoli. Then in the air, it is 0.03, so it diffuses out. And this is how you see that the air gets diffused from one part to another part, depending upon the difference with regard to partial pressure of these gases. Okay? So, similarly, a gradient is present for carbon dioxide in the opposite direction. This is what I already explained, from tissues to blood and blood to alveoli. As the solubility of carbon dioxide is, this is a very important point, as the solubility of carbon dioxide is 20 to 25 times higher than that of oxygen, the amount of carbon dioxide that can diffuse to the diffusion membrane per unit difference in partial pressure is much higher compared to that of oxygen, because solubility is 20 to 25 times higher, right? So I said about the diffusion membrane. What is the diffusion membrane? The diffusion membrane is a membrane that you come across between the alveoli and the blood vessel. The diffusion membrane is made up of 3 major layers, namely a thin squamous epithelium of alveoli, the endothelium, that is nothing but a squamous epithelium, the endothelium of alveolar capillaries, and the basement substance in between them. However, its total thickness is much less than a millimeter. Therefore, all the factors in our body are favorable for diffusion of oxygen from alveoli to tissue and that of carbon dioxide from tissue to alveoli. Now, let us look into this diffusion membrane. You can see here, this is alveolar sac. And what you see here, this is a membrane. Again, it is of squamous epithelium. And this is what you have, blood vessel. And this blood vessel membrane, this is again, this epithelium is always called endothelium. Squamous epithelial membrane of the blood vessel is always called endothelium, and this is a basement substance between that of the epithelium of alveolar sac and epithelium of the blood vessel. So always the gases should be easily passed through this epithelial membranes, squamous epithelial membrane. You know, squamous epithelium is known for allowing this diffusion of gases, right? And we shall continue this transport of gases in our next class.